This video is going to go over the area model for multiplication. Please note that the way that I ask my students and scholars to complete this strategy may be different than your scholars teacher. And so I will point out some of the differences from the major structure of this strategy, but be aware that there may be some slight differences. All right, I'm first going to start by drawing myself a box. I'm going to then look at my factors. I have 45 and 26. 45 has 2 digits in it, which means 2 different place values are represented. I'm going to write that as an expanded form right up here, 40 plus 5. Because I have 2 digits or 2 place values represented, I need 2 columns. Now I could have done 40 plus 5 coming down this side. Same thing, the commutative property for multiplication tells us we can multiply our factors in any order. And then I'm going to take my other factor, 26, and I'm going to put 20 plus 6, and just as I needed 2 columns because I had 2 place values here, I also need 2 rows. Alright, now we need to write in our expressions for what's being multiplied. This is where it's going to be a little different for my students versus what you may do at your school. I think that this helps to make sure we're multiplying the correct thing. So I'm going to switch to red just because it's not required, though I do ask all of my students to do this. This box here, we have 40 and 20. So it's 40 times 20. I could have written it in either direction. I could have done 20 times 40 or 40 times 20. It doesn't matter, again, because of the commutative property. Now we can see the 20 is over here and the 5 is here. So we have 20 times 5. Down here we have 40 times 6. 40 times 6. And then over here we have 6 times 5. I'm going to switch back to blue because this is back to the usual section for this. All right. Now to ask a 4th grader to do the multiplication in this first box, 40 times 20, sounds like a lot, but there's actually a pretty solid trick here. We can do 4 times 2, and that gives us 8. And then there are 2 zeros in our factors, so we need to make sure we put 2 zeros here at the end. We're not adding zeros, so it's really important to make sure we try our best to shy away from that as our language. But we're just putting the zeros there because they're right here. So the number of zeros in your product should match the number of zeros in your factors after the basic fact. So the 8 was our basic fact in this case. All right, now we have 2 times 5 equals 10. There's our basic fact, and then we have this 0 here that we need to place here. So the zeros don't match. It's the zeros after the basic fact that matches. 4 times 6 is 24, and then we have that 0 here. And then 6 times 5 equals 30. Pretty simple strategy. And the last thing that we need to do is to add each of these 4 partial products together. So we have 800, 100, 240, and 30. We have 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0, 0 plus 0 plus 4 plus 3, 8 plus 1 plus 2 is 11. So we're left with our answer of 1,170. One thing to be really careful of is right here. A lot of scholars make a mistake and they don't line up their place values. So be very careful when rewriting your partial products. All right, we're going to solve this second problem. This time I'm noticing that I have a 4-digit number by a 1-digit number. So I don't need a square this time. I'm actually going to draw myself a rectangle. I'm going to put the longer number up at the top. You can really do it any way you want, but for me, I tend to like to put it up at the top. So now I've got 1,436, and I'm going to write it in expanded form, just as I did with the 2-digit number, 1,000 plus 400 plus 30 plus 6. All right, and I'm going to draw in my columns here, just like that. And then over here, I'm going to put down an 8. All right, just as I did before, I'm going to switch colors now because I'm getting into the section. That's optional. Not all teachers are going to require it, though I do. In this box here, we have 1,000 times 8. So I'm going to write 1,000 times 8 with my parentheses here. 400 times 8. 30 times 8. And then 6 times 8. All right, let's fill in our partial products. All right, switching back to blue. 1 times 8 is 8. And then we have 1, 2, 3 zeros. 4 times 8 is 32. 2 zeros. 3 times 8 is 24. 1 zero. And then 6 times 8 is 48. And just as we did in the previous problem, we're going to add all of our partial products. So we have 8,000, 3,200, 240, and 48. We have 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 8, 0 plus 0 plus 4 plus 4, 8, 0 plus 2 plus 2, we're left with 4, and then 8 plus 3 is 11. So your final answer is 11,488. Now, of course, make sure I write it over here at 11,488. There we go. And that's how you solve this problem. At this point, I would say pause the video and try the you try problem. Press play when you're ready to see the solution. Okay, now that you've had time to solve this problem, let's go over it. This is another 2 by 2, so I'm going to draw a box. All right, writing in expanded form. My first factor, 20 plus 4, and my second factor, 30 plus 8. Now, it's totally fine if you put 30 plus 8 here and 20 plus 4 here. Doesn't really matter, as long as you have the factors in expanded form correctly. All right, again, switching to red, because this isn't required, though I think it is definitely recommended. We have 30 times 20. We have 4 times 30. 20 times 8. And then we have 4 times 8 here. All right, I'm going to switch back to blue. Here we go. 3 times 2 is 6. Then we have the 2 zeros here that we need to place up here. Again, remembering not to say add because we're not adding zeros. That wouldn't change the number. It'd still be at 6. 4 times 3 is 12. And then the 1 0 here. 2 times 8 is 16. Then the 1 0. And then 4 times 8 is 32. And just as we did before, we need to add all of our partial products, making sure that we line up our place values so we don't make any computational mistakes when we're adding. All right, 3 zeros and then a 2 gives us 2. 0 plus 2 plus 6 plus 3 is 11, so we need to regroup. Please note the change in language there. When we were growing up, we called that borrowing and carrying and all of that. It's called regrouping. 6 plus 1 is 7, 8, 9. So my final answer is 912, making sure I write my answer on the answer line. And that is the area model for multiplication.